The autumn rain hammered against the windows of McKeesport Area High School with relentless fury. Each drop a small explosion against the glass. Inside, 14-year-old Tanya Koch sat in the back row of her algebra class, staring blankly at equations that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics. Her mind was elsewhere, trapped in the war zone that her home had become. "Miss Koch, are you with us?" Mr. Peterson's voice cut through her fog. She jerked upright, feeling 28 pairs of eyes turned toward her. "Yes, sir. Sorry." But she wasn't sorry. She was exhausted. The night before, her parents had screamed at each other until 3 in the morning, their voices carrying through the thin walls of their modest brick house on Olive Street. Her mother had thrown a plate. Her father had punched a hole in the kitchen wall. Tanya had buried her head under her pillow, counting the seconds between each explosion of anger, wondering when, if, it would ever end. The divorce papers had been filed 3 months ago, but her parents seemed determined to destroy each other before the ink could dry. And Tanya was caught in the crossfire, a ghost in her own home, invisible to everyone except when they needed someone to blame. The bell rang, releasing her from the suffocating classroom. She gathered her books and shuffled into the crowded hallway, keeping her head down, avoiding eye contact. The other kids laughed and joked, planning weekend trips to the mall or movies. Their problems seemed so small, so manageable. They had no idea what real pain looked like. "Hey, Tanya, you okay?" She looked up to find Thomas Hose standing beside her locker. He was a security guard at the school, mid-40s, with graying hair and kind eyes that seemed to actually see her. In a building full of people who looked right through her, Tom noticed when she was hurting. "Yeah, I'm fine," she lied, fumbling with her combination lock. "You don't look fine." His voice was gentle, concerned. "Your parents still fighting?" Tanya felt tears prick her eyes. She'd mentioned the divorce to him a few weeks ago during one of their conversations in the hallway. Unlike the guidance counselors who spoke in rehearsed platitudes, Tom actually listened. He remembered details. He cared. "It's getting worse," she whispered. "Last night was bad." Tom glanced around the hallway, then leaned closer. "Listen, if you ever need to talk, really talk, I'm here. Sometimes it helps to have someone who understands what you're going through. I've been through a divorce myself. I know how much it hurts." Something in his voice resonated with her pain. Here was an adult who didn't judge her, who didn't tell her everything would be okay with empty promises. He understood that sometimes things weren't okay, and that was enough. "Thanks, Tom," she managed, wiping her eyes quickly. "I mean it, Tanya. Anytime." He patted her shoulder in what felt like a fatherly gesture. "You're a good kid. You don't deserve what you're going through." Those words stayed with her throughout the day, a small lifeline in an ocean of chaos. By the time the final bell rang, the rain had intensified into a full storm. Thunder rumbled across the October sky as students rushed to buses and cars, eager to escape into their normal, functional homes. Tanya walked slowly, letting the rain soak through her jacket. She didn't want to go home. Home wasn't safe anymore. It was a battlefield where she was always collateral damage. She found herself wandering toward the football field behind the school, where the bleachers offered some shelter from the downpour. She sat on the cold metal bench, watching the rain create rivers in the dirt track, feeling as washed away as the earth beneath her feet. "Thought I might find you here." She jumped. Tom stood at the base of the bleachers, rain dripping from his security uniform. He climbed up and sat beside her, not too close, respecting her space. "How'd you know?" she asked. "I've been doing this job for 8 years. I know when a kid needs space to think." He stared out at the rain-soaked field. "Your mom called the office. She's going to be late picking you up. Some kind of lawyer meeting." "Of course." Another meeting with attorneys racking up bills they couldn't afford, fighting over possessions neither of them really wanted. It was always about winning, never about healing. "I don't want to go home," Tanya said quietly. The admission felt dangerous, like exposing a wound to infection. "I understand." Tom's voice was soft, sympathetic, what you're going through. It's not fair. You're just a kid. You should be worried about homework and boys, not whether your parents are going to kill each other. Sometimes I think about running away, she confessed. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Just disappearing, starting over somewhere new where nobody knows me. That's a normal feeling, Tom said. But running away isn't the answer. Trust me, I know. I tried it once when I was young. It only makes things worse. They sat in silence for a moment, the rain creating a white noise curtain around them. Tanya felt something shift inside her, a desperate need for someone to care, someone to offer her an escape from the nightmare her life had become. What if there was another way? Tom said suddenly. What if you didn't have to run away, but you also didn't have to stay in that toxic situation? Tanya looked at him confused. What do you mean? I have a spare room at my house, he said carefully. Just temporarily, until things calm down with your parents. You'd be safe there. No fighting, no drama. Just a quiet place where you could focus on school and being a kid again. Warning bells should have rung in her head. Red flags should have waved furiously. But Tanya was 14, drowning in pain, desperate for anyone to throw her a rope. And Tom was offering exactly what she needed: escape. I don't know, she said hesitantly. My parents would never agree to that. We wouldn't tell them, Tom said. His voice carried a conspiratorial edge now, pulling her into a secret world where they were allies against the chaos. Not at first, anyway. Just for a few days until things settle down. They're so caught up in their own war, they probably wouldn't even notice. And when they finally do, you can explain that you needed space. They'll understand. You really think so? I know so. He put his hand on her shoulder again, and this time she didn't pull away. Tanya, I can see you're drowning. Let me help you. That's all I want to do. Help. The rain pounded harder, as if the sky itself was trying to warn her. But all Tanya could hear was the promise of peace, of safety, of someone who finally cared enough to do something. Okay, she whispered. Just for a few days. Tom smiled, and in that moment it seemed like the kindest smile she'd ever seen. She had no way of knowing it was the smile of a predator who had finally cornered his prey. No way of knowing that she wouldn't see her home, her parents, or her old life again for 10 years. As they walked toward his car through the rain, Tanya thought she was being rescued. She had no idea she was disappearing. The last person to see her leave the school parking lot that day was the janitor, Mr. Rodriguez. He would remember the date, October 22nd, 1996, for the rest of his life. He would remember thinking how strange it was to see a student getting into a staff member's car. But he was busy, and it was raining, and it wasn't really his business. By the time anyone realized Tanya Kosh was missing, the trail would be ice cold, and the truth would be buried under a decade of lies, manipulation, and psychological imprisonment so complete that even the victim herself would forget there was ever a world outside her cage. The nightmare was just beginning. The house on Columbia Avenue looked ordinary from the outside. A modest two-story structure with faded blue siding and overgrown hedges that hadn't been trimmed in years. Neighbors rarely paid attention to it. Tom Hose kept to himself, worked a security job at the high school, and caused no trouble. In a working-class neighborhood where everyone minded their own business, that was enough to remain invisible. Tanya stepped inside carrying only her backpack, still wet from the rain. The interior was dim, curtains drawn tight against the fading October daylight. The air smelled stale, like a space that hadn't been properly ventilated in months. Newspapers and magazines cluttered every surface, and a layer of dust covered the furniture. Sorry about the mess, Tom said, locking the door behind them. Tanya heard the deadbolt slide into place with a metallic click that seemed louder than it should have been. I wasn't expecting company. It's fine, she said quietly, suddenly feeling the weight of what she'd done. She'd left with a man without telling anyone where she was going. Her parents would be furious. But then again, would they even notice? They were so consumed with destroying each other that she'd become a footnote in their war. The spare room is upstairs, Tom said, gesturing toward a narrow staircase. Second door on the right. Why don't you get settled while I make us some dinner? Tanya climbed the stairs, each step creaking under her weight. The hallway was even darker than the living room, with only a single dim bulb providing light. She found the room and pushed open the door. It was small and bare, a twin bed with a thin mattress, a dresser with chipped paint, and a window covered by thick curtains. But it was quiet. No screaming, no breaking dishes, no suffocating tension that made it impossible to breathe. She sat on the bed and pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from her mother. Part of her wanted to call back to explain where she was, to somehow make everything okay. But what would she say? That she'd run away with a security guard from her school? That would only create more problems. Tom had said just a few days. She could handle a few days. Then she'd go home. And maybe by then her parents would have figured things out. Maybe they'd even realize how their fighting had driven her away. "Tanya, dinner's ready." Tom's voice echoed up the stairs. She descended to find a small table set with 2 plates of spaghetti. It was simple food, nothing special, but Tom had made an effort. He'd even lit a candle in the center of the table. "I know it's not fancy," he said with an apologetic smile. "Bachelor cooking, you know, but it's hot and filling." They ate in awkward silence at first. Tanya kept glancing at her phone, watching the missed calls pile up. 7 now. Her mother was definitely worried, or angry, probably both. "You should turn that off," Tom said gently, nodding toward the phone. "Just for tonight. Give yourself a break from all the stress. Tomorrow we can figure out how to handle your parents." It made sense. She was exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the past few months. One night of peace wouldn't hurt anyone. She powered down the phone and set it on the table. "There," Tom said, smiling. "Now you can relax. No more drama, no more fighting. Just us, having a normal dinner like normal people." But even as he said it, something felt off. The way he watched her across the table, intense, possessive, like she was something he owned rather than someone he was helping. She pushed the feeling away. She was being paranoid. Tom had been nothing but kind to her. After dinner, Tom suggested they watch television. They settled on the worn couch and he put on an old movie. Tanya found herself drifting, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up with her. Her eyes grew heavy. "You can sleep here on the couch if you want," Tom said softly. "I'll get you a blanket." She meant to protest, to say she'd go upstairs to the spare room, but sleep pulled her under before she could form the words. The last thing she remembered was Tom covering her with a blanket that smelled like mothballs and old fabric softener. When she woke, pale morning light filtered through the heavy curtains. Her neck ached from sleeping at an awkward angle on the couch. She sat up, disoriented, trying to remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The rain, the decision, Tom's house. Her phone. Where was her phone? She found it on the coffee table where she'd left it. When she powered it on, her stomach dropped. 23 missed calls, 15 voicemails, dozens of text messages. Her mother's messages had evolved from concerned to frantic, to angry, to terrified. "Where are you? Tanya, answer your phone. If you don't call me in the next hour, I'm calling the police." The last message was time-stamped at 2 in the morning. "Please, baby, just let me know you're alive. I'm sorry about everything. Please come home." Guilt crashed over her like a wave. Whatever problems existed between her and her mother, she'd never meant to make her think something terrible had happened. She needed to call, to explain, to... Morning. Tom stood in the doorway holding 2 mugs of coffee. His expression was calm, but there was something hard in his eyes. "I heard you moving around." "Tom, I need to call my mom. She's freaking out." "I'm sure she is," he said, setting the mugs on the table. "But think about what you're going to say. If you call her now, she'll demand you come home immediately. The fighting will start again. Nothing will have changed. Is that really what you want?" Tanya hesitated. He was right. Going home now would solve nothing. But her mother's last message, the desperation in it, made her chest ache. "What if I just text her, let her know I'm safe? And when she asks where you are, what will you tell her?" Tom sat beside her on the couch, close enough that she could smell his morning breath. "Tanya, I know this is hard, but you made a decision to take control of your life, to remove yourself from a toxic situation. That takes courage. Don't let guilt pull you back into the chaos." "But she's scared. She thinks something bad happened to me, because she's a bad mother who's too caught up in her own drama to see what she's doing to you." Tom's voice had an edge now, sharp and cutting. "She doesn't deserve your consideration, not after what she's put you through." Tanya flinched at the harshness of his words. Yes, her mother had problems, but she wasn't a bad person. She was just lost. They all were. "I still need to tell her I'm okay," Tanya said quietly but firmly. Tom's jaw tightened. For a moment, something ugly flashed across his face. Anger, frustration, control slipping. Then he smoothed it away, replacing it with the concerned, caring mask she'd grown used to. "Okay," he said slowly. "But let's think this through carefully. We don't want to say anything that might get us both in trouble. After all, I'm an adult and you're a minor. If your mother finds out you're staying here, she could cause problems for me at work. I could lose my job. Is that what you want?" Fear replaced guilt. She hadn't thought about the consequences for Tom. He was trying to help her, and she could ruin his entire life with one phone call. "No, of course not. I don't want you to get in trouble." "Then we need to be smart about this." Tom picked up her phone before she could react. "I'll hold on to this for now, just until we figure out the right approach. In the meantime, you can use my computer to send your mom an email. Tell her you're staying with a friend for a few days while you clear your head. That way she knows you're safe, but she won't know where you are." It sounded reasonable. But as Tom walked away with her phone, tucking it into his pocket, Tanya felt something shift. The door that had seemed like an escape was slowly, subtly, beginning to close. And she was on the wrong side of it. She spent that morning composing an email to her mother on Tom's old desktop computer. She wrote it and rewrote it a dozen times, trying to find the right words. Finally, she settled on something simple. "Mom, I'm safe. I'm staying with a friend because I need space from all the fighting. Please don't worry. I'll come home when I'm ready. Love, Tanya." Tom read it over her shoulder before she could hit send. "Perfect, he said. That should keep her from panicking." He reached past her and clicked the send button. The email disappeared into the digital void, carrying with it Tanya's last clear chance to be found. Her mother would receive it, would be relieved that her daughter was alive, and would assume she was staying with one of her school friends. The police, when they were eventually called, would treat it as a runaway case, a troubled teen escaping a bad home situation. They would search, but not hard enough. They would ask questions, but not the right ones. And meanwhile, in a house on Columbia Avenue in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, a trap was closing around a 14-year-old girl who thought she was being rescued, who couldn't yet see that her rescuer was actually her captor, and that the few days she'd agreed to would stretch into weeks, then months, then years. Tom ordered pizza for lunch and they ate while watching television. He was jovial, telling stories about funny things that had happened at school, treating her like a friend, like someone special. Part of Tanya relaxed into the normalcy of it, but another part, a small, quiet voice in the back of her mind, whispered that something was wrong. That voice would grow louder in the days to come. But by then, it would be too late to listen. The first week passed in a strange blur of routine and restriction. Tanya woke each morning in the small upstairs bedroom, ate meals that Tom prepared, and spent her days watching television or reading old magazines. She kept asking about going back to school, about calling her mother, about the plan to eventually go home. Tom always had a reason why it wasn't the right time yet. "Your mother filed a missing persons report," he told her on day 5, his face grave with concern. "I saw it at work. The police are looking for you. If you surface now, they'll ask questions. They might think I kidnapped you. We need to wait until things calm down." The word kidnapped hit her like a physical blow. "But you didn't kidnap me. I came here willingly." "I know that and you know that," Tom said patiently. "But will the police believe it? Will your mother? I'm a 48-year-old man and you're 14. How do you think that looks? Tanya felt the walls closing in. She'd made a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake, and now she didn't know how to fix it without destroying Tom's life. He'd been trying to help her and she'd put him in an impossible position. What do we do? She whispered. We wait, Tom said firmly. We give it a few more weeks. Let the initial panic die down. Then we can figure out how to handle this without anyone getting hurt. A few more weeks turned into a month, then 2 months. Halloween came and went, visible only through the crack in the curtains where Tanya watched neighborhood children trick-or-treating. Thanksgiving arrived, and Tom made a small turkey dinner that they ate in silence. Christmas approached, and Tanya realized with horror that she'd been gone for 2 months, and the window for easy explanation had long since closed. I want to go home, she told Tom one December evening. Snow fell outside, covering McKeesport in white innocence that felt like a cruel joke. I don't care what happens. I need to see my family. Tom's expression darkened. This was becoming more common. Moments when the kind, concerned facade cracked to reveal something harder, colder, more dangerous underneath. You can't, he said flatly. It's too late now. If you go to the police, they'll arrest me. I'll go to prison. Is that what you want? To destroy the life of the only person who's ever tried to help you? You said we'd figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out. His voice rose, and Tanya shrank back. This was the first time he'd really yelled at her. But you need to be patient, you need to trust me. I'm the adult here, I know what's best. The phrase, I know what's best, would become his mantra over the coming years, repeated endlessly whenever Tanya questioned anything. He knew what was best. He was protecting her. She needed to trust him. By January 1997, 3 months after her disappearance, a new reality had settled over the house on Columbia Avenue. Tanya no longer asked about going home. The guilt and fear had been so thoroughly woven into her psyche that she'd begun to believe Tom's version of events, that she'd made a choice that couldn't be undone, that returning now would only cause pain for everyone, that staying hidden was somehow noble rather than tragic. Tom began laying down rules. She couldn't answer the door when someone knocked. She had to hide in the upstairs closet if he had visitors. She couldn't look out the windows during the day when neighbors might see her. She had to be silent when he was on the phone. It's for your own protection, he explained. If anyone finds out you're here, it's over for both of us. But the rules became more than protective. They became controlling. Tom decided what she ate, what she wore, what she watched on television. He controlled access to the bathroom, to food, to any contact with the outside world. Her phone had disappeared completely, along with her backpack and any identification that proved who she was. One February afternoon, Tom brought home a box of hair dye. We need to change your appearance, he said, just in case. He dyed her brown hair blonde, then cut it short in a style she'd never worn. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. That was the point. Tanya Koch was disappearing, being erased one piece at a time, replaced by whoever Tom needed her to be. From now on, if anyone asks, your name is Nikki, he told her. You're 19 and you're my girlfriend. Can you remember that? Girlfriend, the word made her stomach turn. She was 14, still a child, regardless of what Tom wanted to pretend. It's just a cover story, he said quickly, seeing her discomfort. To explain why you're living here. No one will question it if they think we're dating. But it wasn't just a cover story, and Tanya was beginning to understand that. The way Tom looked at her had changed over the months. What had started as seemingly paternal concern had shifted into something possessive, something wrong. He'd begun touching her shoulder more often, sitting closer to her on the couch, making comments about how pretty she looked. She tried to maintain boundaries to keep their relationship as something like guardian and ward, but Tom was slowly, methodically breaking down those walls. He controlled everything, her food, her movement, her identity. Resistance seemed impossible when she had nowhere to go and no one to help her. By spring 1997, 6 months after her disappearance, The massive search for Tanya Koch had dwindled to almost nothing. Her face appeared occasionally on local news segments about missing children, but the story had lost its urgency. Police had investigated Tom Hose. He was the last school employee to see her that day, but he'd passed their scrutiny. He had no criminal record, seemed genuinely concerned about the missing student, and had no obvious connection to her disappearance beyond being a caring adult who'd noticed she was struggling. The prevailing theory was that Tanya had run away, possibly to another state. Her parents' bitter divorce provided motive. Teenage runaways often turned up eventually, living on the streets of distant cities or staying with friends. The case remained open, but active investigation had essentially stopped. Inside the house on Columbia Avenue, Tanya marked time by small changes in her prison. Tom brought her books from the library, carefully selected to keep her occupied. He bought her clothes from thrift stores, adult clothes in sizes too big for her teenage frame, reinforcing the fiction that she was 19-year-old Nikki rather than 14-year-old Tanya. She learned the rhythms of captivity. Wake when Tom woke, eat what Tom provided, hide when someone knocked, stay silent, stay invisible, stay alive. One warm May evening, Tom came home with news that made Tanya's blood run cold. "I ran into your mother at the grocery store," he said casually, setting down bags of food. "She looked terrible. The divorce really did a number on her." "You talked to her?" Tanya's voice cracked. "What did she say?" "She asked if I'd heard anything about you, if any students had mentioned seeing you." Tom unpacked groceries methodically, not looking at Tanya. "I told her no. I said everyone at school hopes you're okay wherever you are." Tanya felt tears streaming down her face. Her mother had been right there, probably within 100 yards of where Tanya stood at that very moment, and she'd had no idea. Tom had looked her mother in the eye and lied without hesitation. "Why are you crying?" Tom's voice was sharp. "She doesn't deserve your tears. She's the reason you're in this situation. If she'd been a better mother, you never would have needed to leave." But that wasn't true, and somewhere deep inside, Tanya knew it. She hadn't needed to leave. She'd been manipulated, groomed, trapped by someone who'd identified her vulnerability and exploited it. Tom wasn't her savior. He was her captor. Yet knowing that and being able to do anything about it were two entirely different things. She had no phone, no money, no identification. She didn't even look like herself anymore. And Tom had spent months convincing her that she was equally guilty, that she'd made choices that couldn't be undone, that revealing the truth would destroy both their lives. The psychological chains were stronger than any physical lock could ever be. As summer arrived and the one-year anniversary of her disappearance approached, Tanya had moments of clarity where she understood the full horror of her situation. But those moments were brief, quickly drowned by the daily routine of survival, by Tom's manipulation, by the sheer impossibility of escape. She'd stopped thinking of herself as Tanya Koch, missing teenager from McKeesport. She'd become Nikki, the quiet young woman who lived with Tom Hose and never left the house, who had no past and seemingly no future. In the outside world, her family mourned. Her mother attended support groups for parents of missing children. Her father, consumed by guilt over the divorce, spent hours driving around Pennsylvania searching for any sign of his daughter. Friends from school slowly forgot what she looked like, their memories fading as new classes came and new dramas replaced old ones. And in a house that looked ordinary from the outside, a crime continued day after day, hidden in plain sight, a secret buried so deep that even the victim had begun to believe the lies her captor told. The first year of captivity was complete. 9 more would follow, each one building on the last, each one making freedom seem more impossible, until the idea of rescue became as distant and unreal as the girl Tanya had once been. But seeds of eventual salvation were being planted, though no one knew it yet. In a small corner store across town, a man named Joe Sparico kept a bulletin board of missing persons, their faces watching over his deli counter like silent witnesses. Tanya's 14-year-old face smiled from that board, frozen in time, waiting. One day, their paths would cross. But that day was still 9 years away. Years blurred together in a monotonous cycle of control and isolation. Tanya, now answering only to Nikki, watched the world change through glimpses of television and the narrow crack between curtains. She saw the millennium arrive on the small TV screen, watched news coverage of September 11th with Tom standing grimly beside her, observed the evolution of technology and culture from her cage while remaining frozen in time herself. By 2003, she'd been captive for 7 years. She was 21 years old, though the world still remembered her as 14. Her body had matured, but her life had not. She existed in a strange limbo, legally an adult who'd been missing since childhood, yet still completely under Tom's control. The house on Columbia Avenue had become her entire universe. She knew every creak in the floorboards, every stain on the wallpaper, every pattern of shadow and light throughout the day. She could tell time by the sounds of the neighborhood, children walking to school at 8, Mrs. Henderson's dog barking at noon, the mail truck rumbling past at 2. Tom had grown more confident over the years. The initial panic about being discovered had faded into routine complacency. He still enforced the hiding rules when visitors came, but those visits were rare. His father occasionally stopped by, and during those times Tanya would crouch in the upstairs closet for hours, her legs cramping, her breath shallow, listening to muffled conversations through the floor. But something had shifted recently. Tom had started allowing her small freedoms, standing near windows when he was certain no one was watching, sitting on the back porch after dark, existing in spaces beyond the bedroom that had been her primary prison. "You've been good," he told her one autumn evening in 2005. "You've proven I can trust you. Maybe it's time we think about expanding your world a little." Tanya's heart raced. After 9 years, the possibility of freedom, even limited freedom, felt both terrifying and thrilling. "What do you mean?" "There's a small convenience store a few blocks away, Sparico's Deli. I shop there sometimes." Tom studied her carefully. "I think you could go there with me just for a few minutes, get some air, see other people." "Really?" She couldn't keep the hope from her voice. "But you have to remember, you're Nikki. You're my girlfriend. You're 21. If anyone asks questions, you keep your answers short. Understand?" "I understand." The first trip to Sparico's Deli happened on a cold November morning in 2005. Tanya's hands shook as she walked the 3 blocks with Tom, her first time outside beyond the back porch in nearly a decade. The world felt overwhelming. Too bright, too loud, too vast. She'd forgotten how to walk naturally, how to make casual eye contact, how to exist in public space. The deli was small and cluttered, shelves packed with groceries and refrigerators humming along the back wall. An older man stood behind the counter, early 60s, gray hair, kind face. A small television played news in the corner. "Morning, Tom," the man said warmly. Then his eyes shifted to Tanya, curious but not suspicious. "Who's your friend?" "This is Nikki," Tom said smoothly, his hand possessive on her back. "My girlfriend. Nikki, this is Joe Sparico. He owns the place." "Nice to meet you," Joe said, extending his hand. Tanya shook it, acutely aware of how strange the gesture felt after years without human contact beyond Tom. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Nice to meet you too." Joe's eyebrows raised slightly, surprise at her quietness maybe, or something else. But he simply smiled and turned back to Tom. "The usual?" While Tom selected items, Tanya stood frozen near the door, taking in details with desperate intensity. There were other people in the store, a woman buying lottery tickets, a construction worker grabbing coffee. They looked at her briefly, then away, seeing nothing remarkable. Just another customer, just another person. But Tanya wasn't just another person. She was a ghost returned to haunt the living world, and she wondered if anyone could see the truth written across her face. On the wall behind Joe's counter, she noticed a bulletin board covered with faded papers, advertisements, community notices, and photographs. Missing persons, she realized. Her breath caught. Was her picture there? After 9 years, would anyone still be looking? She couldn't see clearly from where she stood, and Tom was watching her too closely to risk moving. They left after 5 minutes, Tom's hand never leaving her back, guiding her like a puppet on strings. "You did well," he told her as they walked home. "See? Nothing to be afraid of. We can do this again." And they did. Once a week, then twice a week, Tom would take Tanya to Sparaco's Deli. She began to recognize Joe, to exchange small pleasantries. He was always kind, always patient with her awkward social skills. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, concern maybe, or puzzlement. But she never asked for help. The psychological conditioning ran too deep. Tom had spent 9 years teaching her that she was complicit, that revealing the truth would mean prison for him and shame for her, that the life she'd lost was irrecoverable. She'd internalized the lies so completely that they'd become her reality. Winter came and went. By spring 2006, Tanya had been visiting Sparaco's Deli for 6 months. She'd learned to relax slightly during these outings, to enjoy the brief illusion of normalcy. Joe had become familiar, a fixture in her constrained world. One warm afternoon in March, she went to the deli alone for the first time. Tom had the flu and needed specific cold medicine that only Joe's store carried. "Just go straight there and back," Tom instructed, his voice hoarse. "Don't talk to anyone more than necessary. Get the medicine and come home." Walking those 3 blocks alone felt like traveling to another country. Every face she passed could be someone who recognized her. Every police car that drove by could be the one that would stop and ask questions. But no one paid attention to a thin young woman in oversized clothes walking down a McKeesport street. Joe was behind the counter when she entered, and his face brightened. "Nikki, where's Tom?" "He's sick," she said quietly. "He needs cold medicine." Aisle 3, halfway down. Joe gestured, then paused. "You okay? You look nervous." "I'm fine," she said automatically. It was the response she'd perfected over years. Deny, deflect, disappear into background noise. She found the medicine and brought it to the counter. Joe rang it up, but his eyes never left her face. That expression was back, the one she couldn't quite interpret. "Nikki," he said carefully, "how long have you and Tom been together?" The question felt like a trap. "A while," she said vaguely. "You seem young. How old are you?" 21. The lie came easily now, practiced and smooth. But Joe's expression suggested he didn't believe her. 21, he repeated slowly. "And you live with Tom?" "Yes." Her hands trembled as she counted out cash. Why was he asking these questions? Had he figured something out? Joe accepted the money but didn't immediately give her the change. Instead, he studied her with an intensity that made her want to run. "You know," he said quietly, "if you're ever in trouble, you can tell me. I won't judge. I'll just listen." Tanya's throat tightened. For a moment, one brief, terrifying moment, she considered telling the truth. Considered saying the words that had been locked inside her for 9 years. "I'm not Nikki. I'm Tanya Koch. I've been missing since 1996. Help me." But fear strangled the words before they could form. Tom's voice echoed in her mind. "If you tell anyone, I go to prison. You go to prison. Everyone you love will be ashamed of you." "I'm not in trouble," she whispered. "Everything's fine." Joe handed her the change, but his eyes held hers for a long moment. "Okay," he said finally, "but the offer stands. Anytime." Tanya fled the store, her heart hammering. She walked quickly back to the house, her mind racing. Joe suspected something. How much did he know? Would he call the police? When she told Tom about the conversation, his face darkened with rage. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I swear I didn't say anything. He's asking too many questions." Tom paced the living room, agitated. Maybe we shouldn't go back there for a while. But avoiding the deli would look suspicious, and Tom knew it. So they continued their visits, and Joe continued to watch Tanya with that same concerned, searching expression. What Tanya didn't know was that Joe Sparaco had been watching his bulletin board of missing persons for over a decade. He knew those faces intimately, had memorized their features, their ages, their stories. And something about the quiet young woman Tom called Nikki had been nagging at him for months. The shape of her face, the way she carried herself, hunched and fearful, the obvious age difference between her and Tom, the sadness in her eyes that no 21-year-old should carry. One evening after they'd left his store, Joe walked to his bulletin board and studied the faces. His eyes landed on a photograph near the bottom, faded now, 11 years old. A smiling 14-year-old girl with brown hair and braces. Tanya Koch, missing since October 1996. Joe lifted the photo and held it under better light. The hair was different. The age was different. The smile was long gone. But the eyes, those eyes were the same. His hands shook as the realization crystallized. Nikki wasn't Nikki. She was Tanya. And Tom Hose had been hiding her for over a decade. Joe didn't call the police immediately. He was a cautious man, and accusing someone falsely of such a crime would be devastating. He needed to be certain. He needed proof. So he started paying closer attention during their visits. He noticed how Tom never let Tanya wander far from his side, how she flinched when Tom touched her, how her voice dropped to almost nothing when answering questions, how she never bought anything without Tom's approval, never spoke without checking his reaction first. These were not the behaviors of a girlfriend. They were the behaviors of a prisoner. Joe made a decision. The next time she came in alone, he would ask her directly. He would create an opportunity for her to tell the truth if she could find the courage. That opportunity came sooner than expected. On a Tuesday afternoon in late March 2006, Tanya entered the deli alone again. Tom had sent her for bread and milk. Joe was ready. The afternoon sun filtered through the deli's front windows, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Tanya entered with her usual hesitant steps, eyes downcast, shoulders hunched inward as if trying to make herself invisible. The store was empty except for Joe behind the counter. He'd planned for this, had been watching the timing of her visits, noting when she came alone, when the store was likely to be quiet. This was his moment, and he knew it might be his only chance. "Nikki," he said gently as she gathered items from the shelves, "can I ask you something?" She froze, her hand hovering over a loaf of bread. That familiar fear flickered across her face. "What? How long have you lived in McKeesport?" "A while." The practiced vagueness, the rehearsed deflection. Joe stepped out from behind the counter, moving slowly so as not to startle her. "The thing is, I've lived here my whole life, 63 years. I know most families in this area, at least by sight, but I don't remember seeing you around until recently. Where did you grow up?" Tanya's breathing quickened. She set down the bread, her hands trembling. We moved here, from out of state." "Which state?" "I don't remember." The lie was so transparent it hurt to hear. Joe took a careful breath, knowing he was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph he'd removed from his bulletin board. 14-year-old Tanya Koch, smiling in her school picture, frozen forever in 1996. "Do you know this girl?" he asked quietly. Tanya's eyes locked onto the photograph. All color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She looked like someone who'd seen a ghost, and in a way she had. She was staring at herself, at the person she used to be, at the life that had been stolen from her. "Her name is Tanya Koch," Joe continued, his voice gentle but firm. "She disappeared from McKeesport Area High School in October 1996. She was 14 years old. Nobody's seen her since." Tears spilled down Tanya's cheeks. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat, trapped by a decade of fear and conditioning. "Nikki," Joe said softly, "I don't think that's really your name, is it?" The dam broke. 10 years of silence, of lies, of suffocating terror came flooding out in gasping sobs. Tanya collapsed against the nearest shelf, her legs unable to support her weight anymore. Joe moved quickly, catching her arm, guiding her to a plastic chair near the register. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe here. Just breathe." Between sobs, Tanya tried to form words. "I can't. I can't." "Who?" "Tom." Joe knelt beside her chair, his aged knees protesting. "Nikki, or whatever your real name is, are you in danger?" She nodded, still unable to speak coherently. The fear was overwhelming, drowning her. Tom's warnings echoed in her mind. If you tell anyone, everything falls apart. Prison, shame, destruction. But looking at that photograph, at her own young, innocent face, something cracked inside her. That girl in the picture deserved justice. That girl's family deserved to know the truth, and the woman she'd become deserved freedom. "I'm Tanya," she whispered so quietly Joe almost missed it. "I'm Tanya Koch." Joe's eyes filled with tears. He'd suspected, but hearing the confirmation still hit him like a physical blow. "How long has he had you?" "Since 1996, since I was 14. The words tumbled out now, desperate and broken. "He was a security guard at my school. He said he was helping me. He said it would just be a few days, but then he wouldn't let me leave, and I couldn't tell anyone because he said it was my fault too, that I'd go to prison, that everyone would hate me. And I believed him. I still believe him. But I can't. I can't do this anymore, I can't." Joe stood, his decision made. "I'm calling the police." "No." Tanya grabbed his arm, panic surging. "You don't understand. He'll kill me. He'll kill himself. He's been holding you prisoner for 10 years, Joe said firmly. "That's not love. That's not protection. That's a crime. And it ends today." He walked to the phone behind the counter, but before he could dial, Tanya spoke again. "Wait." Her voice was stronger now, steadier. "If you call them, they'll come here. Tom will see the police cars. He'll know I told. Let me go back first. Tell him I'm running an errand. Then call. Please, I need to do this right." Joe hesitated. Every instinct screamed to call immediately, to end this nightmare now. But he could see the terror in her eyes, real, bone-deep terror of what Tom might do if he felt cornered. "Okay," he said finally, "but I'm calling in exactly 15 minutes. Can you get home and inside in that time?" "Yes." "Then go." "But Tanya?" He held her gaze. "This is really over. In 15 minutes, the police will know everything. There's no going back." She nodded, grabbed the bread and milk with shaking hands, and walked out of the store. The 3-block journey home felt like 3 miles. Every step was weighted with the knowledge that her life, for better or worse, was about to change forever. When she entered the house on Columbia Avenue, Tom was on the couch watching television. He looked up with mild interest. "Get everything?" "Yes." She set the groceries on the kitchen counter, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. "You took a while." There was a line. Another lie, but this would be one of her last. Tom grunted and returned his attention to the TV. Tanya stood in the kitchen, watching him, this man who'd stolen a decade of her life. Part of her felt pity. He was about to lose everything. But a larger part felt something else. Not quite anger, not quite relief. Just exhaustion. Bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. She glanced at the clock. 12 minutes since she'd left the deli. In 3 minutes, Joe would call the police. In maybe 10 or 15 minutes, they'd arrive. She should hide. She should run. She should do something. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table and waited. The minutes crawled by. Tom remained oblivious, laughing at something on the television. Tanya watched the second hand on the wall clock, counting down to her liberation. 14 minutes, 15, 16. Then the sound she'd been waiting for, distant at first, then growing louder. Sirens. Tom's head snapped up. "What's that?" The sirens grew louder, closer. Tom stood, walked to the window, pulled back the curtain. 2 police cars were pulling up outside the house. His face went white. "What did you do?" I told the truth, Tanya said quietly. I told them who I am. For a moment, Tom looked like he might lunge at her, might try to silence her one final time. But the pounding on the front door stopped him. Police! Open up! Tom turned to Tanya, and in his eyes she saw desperation, rage, and something that might have been genuine devastation. You've ruined everything, he whispered. No, she replied, her voice steady for the first time in 10 years. You did, a long time ago. The pounding intensified. We're coming in. Tom walked to the door in a daze and opened it. 4 officers rushed in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. 2 grabbed Tom, forcing him to the ground, handcuffing him while reading his rights. The other 2 swept through the house, searching. One officer, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes, approached Tanya carefully. Are you Tanya Kosh? After a decade of being Nikki, of being no one, of being Tom's prisoner, Tanya reclaimed her name. Yes, I'm Tanya Koch. The officer's expression crumpled with relief and anguish. We've been looking for you for a very long time. You're safe now. You're really safe. But Tanya didn't feel safe. She felt exposed, terrified, overwhelmed. The walls that had imprisoned her had also protected her from a world she no longer understood. Freedom was terrifying in ways captivity had never been. From the floor, Tom was shouting. She came willingly, she wanted to stay. This is all a misunderstanding. Sir, you need to stop talking, one of the officers said firmly. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics checked Tanya's vital signs, asked questions she couldn't quite process. More police arrived. A detective, a tall man with gray hair and a weathered face, pulled up a chair beside her. Tanya, my name is Detective William Morrison. I know this is overwhelming, but I need to ask you some questions. Can you do that? She nodded. How long were you in this house? 10 years, since October 1996. And Thomas Hose prevented you from leaving? Yes. Did he physically restrain you? Lock doors? Sometimes, but mostly. He made me believe I couldn't leave, that it was my fault, that I'd be in trouble too. Morrison's jaw tightened. Tanya, you were 14 when this started. You were a child. None of this is your fault. Do you understand that? She wanted to believe him, but Tom's voice was still in her head, would be in her head for years to come, insisting that she was guilty, that she'd made choices, that she deserved this. I don't know, she admitted. We're going to help you figure it out, Morrison said gently. But first we need to get you to the hospital, get you checked out, and then... He paused, emotion crossing his face. Then we need to call your family. They never stopped looking for you. Tanya's breath caught. Her family. Her mother, who'd been at that grocery store years ago, so close yet impossibly far. Her father, who she hadn't seen since she was 14. Did they still remember her? Would they still love her? As paramedics helped her to her feet, Tanya took one last look at the house that had been her prison. Tom was being led out in handcuffs, still protesting, still insisting this was somehow a misunderstanding. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Tanya saw the future reflected there. Trials, testimonies, years of psychological recovery that might never fully heal the damage done, but she also saw something else. An ending. This chapter of her life, this decade of horror, was finally closing. The next chapter, whatever it held, would be written by her choices, not his control. They led her out into the afternoon sunlight, and Tanya Kosh took her first steps as a free woman in 10 years. The nightmare was over. The healing could begin. The hospital room was too bright, too clean, too open. After a decade in dimly lit rooms with drawn curtains, the fluorescent lights felt like an assault. Tanya sat on the examination table, a female officer stationed outside the door, while doctors ran tests and asked questions in voices that tried too hard to be gentle. Any physical pain? A doctor asked, her face professionally neutral but eyes betraying her horror at what she was documenting. No, Tanya said. The truth was more complicated. She ached everywhere and nowhere. Her body a map of small traumas that had become so normalized, she no longer recognized them as pain. News of her rescue spread through McKeesport like wildfire. By evening, the hospital parking lot was flooded with media vans, reporters shouting questions at anyone entering or exiting. The missing girl from 1996 had been found alive, hidden in plain sight for a decade. It was the kind of story that captured national attention. Horrifying, incomprehensible, and yet somehow tragically all too real. Detective Morrison returned to her room around 7 o'clock. "Tanya, your family is here. Your mother, your father, your brother. They're waiting in a private room. Are you ready to see them?" Was she ready? How could anyone be ready for this? She was 24 years old, but the last time she'd seen her family, she'd been 14. They'd aged 10 years. She'd aged a lifetime. "Yes," she whispered. Morrison led her down a quiet hallway, away from the chaos of the main waiting area. He stopped at a door marked Family Conference Room and turned to her. "Take your time in there," he said softly. "There's no rush. We can wait as long as you need." He opened the door. The first thing Tanya saw was her mother. Judy Koch stood frozen near the window, a woman in her mid-50s whose face showed every minute of the 10 years she'd spent searching for her daughter. Gray streaked her dark hair. Deep lines framed her eyes and mouth. But when she saw Tanya, those eyes filled with a light that transcended all the pain. "Tanya?" Her voice broke on the name. "Mom." The word felt foreign in Tanya's mouth, a relic from another life. Judy crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Tanya into her arms. The embrace was fierce, desperate, filled with a decade of unanswered prayers. Tanya felt her mother's whole body shaking with sobs. "My baby," Judy gasped. "My baby, my baby, my baby." Behind them, Tanya's father stood. Jerry Koch, older and grayer than she remembered, his face wet with tears he wasn't trying to hide. Her younger brother, who'd been just a kid when she disappeared, was now a young man of 22, staring at his sister like she was a ghost made flesh. The reunion was everything, and nothing like she'd imagined during those long years of captivity. Her family loved her. That was clear in every tear, every embrace, every whispered word. But there was also confusion, questions neither side knew how to ask, a chasm of experience that couldn't be bridged with hugs alone. "Where were you?" her father finally asked, his voice hoarse. "All these years, where were you?" "Here," Tanya said quietly. "In McKeesport, 3 blocks from where I disappeared." The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Judy's knees buckled and Jerry had to catch her. 3 blocks, she repeated in disbelief. "You were 3 blocks away this whole time?" "Tom Hose kept her in his house," Detective Morrison explained gently. "He's been arrested and is currently being held without bail." "Tom Hose?" Jerry's face darkened with recognition. "The security guard? The one we talked to during the investigation?" "Yes, sir." Jerry's hands clenched into fists. "I looked that man in the eye. He helped put up missing posters. He told us he hoped we'd find her safe." His voice rose. "And she was in his house the entire time?" "Dad," Tanya said softly. And he stopped, turned to her, all the rage draining into helpless grief. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry we didn't find you. I'm sorry we stopped looking in the right places. I'm sorry for everything." "It's not your fault," Tanya said, though the words felt hollow. Whose fault was it? Tom's, certainly. But hadn't she walked into his car willingly that rainy October day? Hadn't she stayed, at least at first, of her own accord? The psychology of her captivity was too complex to explain even to herself. They talked for hours in that small room. Tanya tried to explain what had happened, though she couldn't find words for the full horror of it. How do you tell your family that you were psychologically broken down so completely that you forgot how to want freedom? That you'd seen your mother at a grocery store and said nothing? That you'd passed missing person posters with your own face and felt only numbness? "Why didn't you run?" her brother asked, not accusingly, but genuinely trying to understand. "When he let you go to the store, why didn't you run?" "I don't know," Tanya admitted. "He made me believe that I couldn't, that I was guilty too, that everything would be worse if I told the truth. And after so many years, I just believed it. I forgot that I deserved to be free." Judy held her daughter's hand, squeezing tight, as if physical contact could somehow undo the lost decade. "You're free now," she said firmly. "And we're never letting you go again." But even as she said it, both women knew it wasn't that simple. Tanya couldn't just slot back into a family she'd left 10 years ago. She was different now, damaged, changed, a stranger wearing her daughter's face. The road ahead would be long and painful, full of therapy, legal proceedings, and the slow, agonizing work of rebuilding a life from ashes. Over the next few days, the story exploded across national media. Tanya's 14-year-old school photo appeared on every news channel, paired with footage of Tom Hose being led into court in handcuffs. The charges were staggering: kidnapping, unlawful restraint, involuntary deviate sexual intercourse, statutory sexual assault, and corruption of minors. Tom pleaded not guilty, his lawyer arguing that Tanya had been a willing participant, that she'd stayed of her own free will. The defense tried to paint her as a troubled teenager who'd run away and then, years later, regretted her decision. But the evidence painted a different picture. Investigators found documentation in Tom's house: journals, photographs, records of the decade-long captivity. They interviewed neighbors who'd occasionally seen Nikki, but never questioned the relationship. They talked to Joe Sparico, who'd kept Tanya's missing person photo on his wall for 10 years, waiting for the day he'd recognize her. The trial began in October 2007, 18 months after Tanya's rescue. She had to testify, had to sit in a courtroom and recount every detail of her captivity while Tom sat feet away, staring at her with that same possessive expression she'd seen for 10 years. "He told me I was special," she testified, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "He said he was the only one who understood me, who cared about me. And when I was 14 and my parents were destroying each other, I believed him. I trusted him. And he used that trust to trap me." The prosecution presented evidence of manipulation, of psychological abuse, of a predator who'd groomed a vulnerable child and then held her prisoner for a decade. Character witnesses described Tom as controlling, isolated, with a history of inappropriate attention to young female students. The defense tried to argue that Tanya had opportunities to escape and didn't take them. But expert witnesses explained Stockholm Syndrome, trauma bonding, and the complex psychology of long-term captivity. They explained how a captor doesn't need physical chains when psychological ones are so much stronger. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours. They found Thomas Hose guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked directly at Tom before speaking. "Mr. Hose, you took a child who trusted you and destroyed her life. You stole her adolescence, her education, her freedom, and very nearly her sanity. You showed no remorse, no recognition of the magnitude of your crimes. This court sentences you to 5 to 15 years in state prison. 5 to 15 years, for 10 years of captivity." The sentence seemed impossibly light, but the judge explained that plea negotiations and sentencing guidelines limited her options. It was better than nothing, but it felt like injustice nonetheless. Tanya didn't react visibly to the sentence. She'd learned over the past year not to show emotion, to keep everything locked inside where it was safe. But that night, alone in her mother's house, she couldn't think of it as home yet. She finally let herself cry. Not tears of relief or joy, but of grief for the girl she'd been, the life she'd lost, the decade that could never be reclaimed. The media eventually moved on to other stories. Tanya's face faded from news broadcasts, replaced by new tragedies, new scandals. She was grateful for the anonymity, even as she struggled with the isolation it brought. Rebuilding her life was harder than she'd imagined. She had no high school diploma, no work experience, no social skills beyond what she'd developed as a prisoner. She enrolled in GED classes, worked with therapists 3 times a week, and tried to navigate a world that had moved on without her. Technology had evolved. Social media existed, Cell phones did things she couldn't comprehend. Fashion had changed. Music had changed. Everything had changed, and she was a relic from 1996 trying to survive in 2008. But slowly, painfully, she made progress. She earned her GED. She got a part-time job at a local library where the quiet suited her and people asked few questions. She made friends. Carefully, slowly, learning to trust again in increments. She wrote a book about her experience, not for fame or money, but because the therapist said writing could be healing. The book sold modestly, and she used the proceeds to fund a scholarship for at-risk youth, kids who might be vulnerable to predators like Tom. Years passed. Tom served his sentence and was released in 2022, 15 years after Tanya's rescue. She learned about his release from the news, felt the old fear resurface, then pushed it down. He had no power over her anymore. He was just a sick old man, his life ruined, while she was still building hers. In 2025, 19 years after her rescue, Tanya stood in front of a group of high school students, giving a talk about awareness and safety. She looked at their young faces, the same age she'd been when Tom had offered her escape from her troubled home, and felt the weight of responsibility. "Trust your instincts," she told them. "If something feels wrong, it probably is. No adult should ask you to keep secrets from your family. No adult should make you feel like you owe them something. And if you find yourself in trouble, tell someone. Keep telling people until someone listens. Don't wait 10 years like I did." After the talk, a girl approached her, 14, shy, wearing the same hunched posture Tanya remembered from her own youth. "My parents are getting divorced," the girl said quietly. "And this teacher at school has been really nice to me. He says I can talk to him anytime. Is that okay?" Tanya's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice calm. "What's your name?" "Emily." "Emily, I want you to tell me that teacher's name, and then I want you to promise me that you'll never be alone with him. And if he ever offers you special attention, special help, or asks you to keep secrets, you'll tell your parents immediately. Can you do that?" Emily nodded, understanding something in Tanya's tone that transcended words. They talked for 20 minutes, and Tanya made sure Emily had her phone number, the number for the school counselor, and the number for a crisis hotline. As Emily walked away, Tanya felt something unexpected. Purpose. Her lost decade hadn't been meaningless if it could save even one person from the same fate. Tom had stolen her adolescence, but he hadn't stolen her future. She'd built that herself, piece by painful piece, and she'd keep building it for as long as she lived. The girl who disappeared in 1996 was gone forever. But the woman who'd survived, who'd escaped, who'd rebuilt her life from ruins, that woman was strong in ways the girl had never imagined. And that strength, hard-won and battle-scarred, was something no one could ever take away. Tanya Koch's story didn't have a Hollywood ending. There was no complete healing, no magical moment when everything became okay. But there was survival. There was resilience. There was the quiet victory of waking up each morning and choosing to live, really live in freedom. And sometimes that was enough.